Right, we now come to business questions. Shadow Leader of the House, Chris Philp.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Could I ask the Leader to provide a statement of forthcoming business?
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The business for the week commencing the 7th of October includes Monday the 7th of October, general debate on Lord Darcy's independent investigation into NHS performance. Tuesday the 8th of October, Opposition Day, second allotted day, debate on a motion in the name of the official opposition, subject to be announced. Wednesday the 9th of October, second reading of the Renters Reform Bill. Thursday the 10th of October, as well as being my birthday, general debate on sport following the Olympic and Paralympic Team GB success. Friday the 11th of October, the House will not be sitting. The provisional business for the week commencing the 14th of October will include Monday the 14th of October, second reading of the Terrorism Protection of Premises Bill. Tuesday the 15th of October, second reading of the House of Lords Hereditary Peers Bill. Wednesday the 16th of October, Opposition Day, third allotted day, debate on a motion in the name of the Liberal Democrats, subject to be announced. Thursday the 17th of October, general debate, subject to be announced. And Friday the 18th of October, the House will not be sitting.
Ms Philp.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, I must say, the business just announced for the first week back strikes me as extraordinarily light. There is only a single piece of substantive government business, and half the time is going to be taken up with general debates. This government of service seems to be taking it pretty easy. In fact, after 70 days, only 13 bills have been introduced. I looked up the record of the previous government following the 2019 election, and I discovered that in 100 days they introduced 31 new bills. So the Right Honourable Lady has quite a lot of work to do in the next 30 days if she is going to catch up with Boris Johnson. Mr Speaker, millions of pensioners are sick with worry following early this week's shameful vote, stripping them of their winter fuel allowance, including pensioners in poverty. I would like to acknowledge and recognise those 53 courageous Labour MPs who did not support it, but the other 350 Labour MPs did vote for this appalling measure. I now join the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, in urgently calling on the government to publish the impact assessment. The Prime Minister said on the 8th of July in a speech to the civil service that his government would be, and I quote, open and transparent. So where is the openness and transparency here? The only impact assessment we've seen is the Labour Party's own impact assessment, suggesting the policy would cause 3,850 deaths. So I call on the Right Honourable Lady to do the decent thing and publish that impact assessment. This is not so much a government of service as a government of secrecy. Mr Speaker, I also call for an urgent debate on the management of the early release scheme for prisoners. Now, the Justice Secretary came to this House on the 25th of July and told us and promised us that the worst violent and sexual offenders would be excluded. I'm quoting her words directly. And she also promised that domestic abuse offenders would be excluded as well. And I'm sorry to say to the House, that is not what has happened. The National Association of Prison Officers General Secretary Ian Lawrence has said this. Members, and I'm quoting, members have shared examples where those with both domestic violence offences and sexual offences have been released early. He goes on to say that his members, prison officers, are extremely disappointed, I'm quoting once again, that during several media appearances, government ministers have denied that, and he calls on the government to correct the record. So I call on the Leader to do that now, correct the record and correct the inaccurate information which her colleagues have provided to the public. And Mr Speaker, some of the examples of those released early, contrary to the assurances the Justice Secretary gave this House, are appalling. Lawson Natty, aged 20, due for early release, provided the machete that was used to kill 14-year-old Gordon Gould. His mother describes herself as sickened by this early release. Adam Andrews, also due for early release, brutally assaulted a 21-day-old baby, leaving that baby blind and paralysed. We were promised serious violent offenders would not be released early. That promise, Mr. Speaker, appears to be broken. Not a government of service, a government of shameful incompetence. So, Mr. Speaker, it's been 70 days since the election. It's been a pretty terrible start to government. Pensioners in poverty stripped of their winter fuel allowance, while at the same time there are inflation-busting pay rises for train drivers who already earn £65,000 a year. Labour Party donors appointed to civil service positions, and the botched release of prisoners, contrary to promises made to this House that violent offenders would not be released early. No wonder the government's approval ratings have plummeted at what, as far as I can see, is the fastest rate of any government in modern times. They now stand at minus 36%. But don't worry, the government do have one new supporter. Mr Jaba Benaluma says he will now be a lifelong Labour voter. The only problem is he is a convicted drug dealer who is very happy at his early release. Not so much a government of service as a government for their donors, for their trade union paymasters and for violent criminals who they promised would not be released early, but in fact they did so.
Can I start, Mr Speaker, by welcoming the news that the Princess of Wales has completed her chemotherapy and is now moving on to the next stage of her recovery. And like you, Mr Speaker, I would like to place on record my thanks to the Speaker's chaplain, the Venerable Patricia Hollis. Today is her final week and we thank her for her contribution to this House. Can I also congratulate all the newly elected Select Committee chairs? They play a very important role in this House. And can I also send my regards to Terry Wiggins, who has served us as a chef for an astonishing 50 years. We all know Terry as the mainstay of the debate, and I'm sure he'll miss serving up the famous House of Commons jerk chicken. And I know he's looking forward to having more time walking with his dogs. And I have to say, Mr Speaker, they must be the best fed dogs in the country. This week, Mr Speaker, the first time in 14 years a Labour bill became an act. The Budget Responsibility Act ensures there can never again be a repeat of Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget. And as we grapple with the £22 billion black hole left by the party opposite, what a stark reminder it is of the importance of economic stability. The theme this week of the government is a government honouring its commitment we've made to all those who've been let down. We published the Renters' Rights Bill, finally ending no-fault evictions, long promised but never realised. We've begun the reform of outdated compulsory purchase rules to help unlock town centre regeneration. Levelling up, remember that? And to the workers of Port Talbot Steel, left hanging by the previous government, the Business Secretary announced a new deal welcomed by workers and their representatives. And today, Mr Speaker, we introduce the Terrorism Protection of Premises Bill, otherwise known as Martin's Law, meeting the promise the Prime Minister made to Figan Murray, who lost her son Martin Hett in the Manchester Arena attack. And I'm personally delighted we're doing this today. This is a government of service, delivering its manifesto, sticking to its promises and cleaning up the mess left by the party opposite. Another commitment we made, Mr Speaker, began its work this week with the first meeting of the Modernisation Committee. I'd like to thank members from across the House who've joined and contributed to this process so far, including the Shadow Leader. And I might also say the member for Christchurch, who is taking his membership very seriously indeed. This morning, the committee has published a memorandum setting out its core principles and early priorities, and I'd encourage members from across the House to take a look at that. Mr Speaker, we seem to be developing a common theme in these exchanges. They lost the election badly because they crashed the economy, they made people worse off, and they didn't fix the foundations of this country. He seems to think we can just carry on as we were, but we saw that movie and it didn't end well. that he asks me about the prisons crisis in particular. Again, the management of the prison release scheme. But let's just remember that we inherited the prisons on the point of collapse from the party opposite. After the riots, we came within 100 places of our prisons overflowing. If we had not acted, courts would not have been able to hold trials and the police would not have been able to make arrests. Our entire criminal justice system was on the brink of collapse. And police chiefs warned his government that failing to act before the election would increase the risk considerably, including the risk of serious disorder. And what did his government do? Absolutely nothing. But we have made the difficult decisions that we had to make to ensure that our prisons didn't collapse and the whole criminal justice didn't collapse. They ducked the big issues as ever, and we acted. And I won't take any lectures from him about that. I notice he didn't, Mr. Speaker, ask me about the NHS. The damning findings of the Darcy report out this morning are another utterly unforgivable example of the state of public services we inherited from the party opposite. The true scale of the crisis in our NHS, experienced by all our constituents, family and friends every day, has been laid bare this morning. Does he want to take the opportunity to apologise for that this morning, Mr. Speaker? No, I didn't think he did. I also notice he didn't repeat the claim he often makes that they actually left us a booming economy. Is that because yesterday's growth figures confirmed what we all know, that under his party's watch we had no growth, we had falling living standards and a stagnant economy? That's the legacy of his party and he knows it. Mr. Speaker, we are fixing the foundations and stabilising the economy. That's why they lost and we won. We won't put our heads in the sand, and we're keeping our promises to renters, to steel workers, and today to Fegan Murray. Restoring trust in politics squandered by the party opposite. This is the change the country voted for, and it's the change that we're delivering.
Siobhain McDonagh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the leader find time for a debate on glioblastoma, drug tumours? As the Speaker will know, and as she will know, 3,200 people each year are diagnosed with this death sentence. It is the largest killer of under 40s, and life expectancy at 5 years is just 5%. Without the intervention of the government into the pharmaceutical industry and into the NHS, there will be no improvement in another 40 years, and the numbers of people traumatised, dead and scandalised will continue.
Well, can I thank the Right Honourable Lady for raising this important matter, and I know of what an amazing campaigner she has become on the issue of brain cancers, following the tragic death of her beloved, much-loved sister, Margaret, who we all dearly miss to this day. And she and I both know many people affected by this terrible disease that is the killer of so many and has such a terrible prognosis when it's delivered to people. It's absolutely heartbreaking. I will ensure that the Health Secretary has heard what she said today, and I'm sure, should she apply for a debate, it would be very welcome to this House.
We come to the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Wera Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank her for announcing the forthcoming business and echo her words, wishing the Princess of Wales all the best in her further recovery. May I also say how proud it makes me that the first Opposition Day debate in the name of the Liberal Democrats has been announced today. Mr. Speaker, tomorrow marks the beginning of the Jane Austen Festival in Bath. It is the largest festival of its kind and a wonderful occasion to celebrate one of the city's most famous residents. Anybody here is invited to come and celebrate Jane Austen in Bath's Regency glory. Austen is one of the UK's best-known female authors, and her writing is still known 200 years after she wrote her famous novels. She was a strong advocate for education and broke down barriers for women in education and in literature, which makes it all the more disappointing that many students even today will not study a female author at GCSE. A shameful 2% of students studied a female author at GCSE, according to End Sexism in Schools. It is not just the authorship of novels where women lack representation. Of the set text offered by the most popular awarding body, over 70% have both a female author and a male author and a male protagonist. Diverse literature enriches children's education. There's a wealth of inspiring novels written by women that children unfortunately do not get to read in school. For the next generation to grow up challenging male dominance in society, boys and girls need to be exposed to empowering representations of women. We need more pride and less prejudice in the curriculum. In the light of the government's upcoming curriculum and assessment review, can we have a statement from the Minister on how to address the gender bias in English literature?
Leader of the House.
Well, what a wonderful issue to raise in Business Question, and I wish the residents of Bath, but everybody across this country in real good wishes and celebrating the fabulous work of Jane Austen. I haven't had time to think of a better pun than the one that the Honourable Lady then weaved into her tribute, but she's absolutely right that women and young girls, but actually young boys as well, really should be studying female authors and also understand the contribution that women have played in the progress of society across not just culture and the arts and literature, but also science, engineering and technology, and they're too often forgotten in our history and in our curriculum. I am sure that this is a matter of our curriculum review, and I will ensure that the Secretary of State for Education has heard her very good speech this morning.
Clive Efford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the words that the Leader of the House about Terry Wiggins? I knew Terry about over 50 years ago as we grew up in the same area, and he is also Commissioner of Scouts in Greenwich, and he puts a lot into our local community. Can I ask the Leader of the House to consider the contaminated blood scandal as a possible debate for the Thursday the 17th? Because we were promised a full day's debate into the scandal following the publication of Sir Robert Francis' report on the compensation scheme. So I wonder if she would consider that.
Leader.
Can I thank my honourable friend for that? He will be aware that we have, in the short time that we've been in government, there have been 2 statements to this House on the infected blood compensation scheme, which this government worked at pace and incredibly hard over the summer to ensure that our statutory deadline of establishing the compensation scheme was actually met by the 23rd of August, and now that compensation scheme is up and running and being paid out. He's absolutely right that there is a commitment for further time on the floor of the House to discuss and debate these issues, and I know that they are in active discussion to bring forward.
Chair of the Backbench Committee, in welcoming Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would urge the Leader to publish the details in terms of numbers on select committees and the usual channels to get on with populating the select committees, in particular, of course, the Backbench Business Committee, so that we can start to schedule debates that backbenchers want rather than the government want to table. Can I also say that she hasn't announced the tobacco and vapes bill coming back. During the committee stage, I and many members on the other side proposed amendments to the then government's bill, which we would want to progress. I realise obviously that will be considered by the Health Secretary. Will she also take back the view that shisha lounges and the sale of pan need to be part of the regulation that we take forward, because otherwise we're going to leave escape clauses for those that want to resist mouth, throat and lung cancer?
Leader.
Well, can I first of all welcome the honourable gentleman to his election as the chair of the Backbench Business Committee. I know from the previous Parliament of what fantastic work he did as the vice chair, I think, of the previous committee, and he and I were in these sessions together for many hours during the last session, and I look forward to working with him, and I've already been in touch with him to fix up a meeting at the earliest opportunity so that we can table forthcoming time in the chamber. And absolutely, we will be working at pace to populate the committees so they can get up and running as quickly as possible. He will know on the tobacco and vapes bill that we announced that we would take forward that bill in our King's Speech. It will be coming forward to this House in due course, and I know that one of the issues the Secretary of State is looking at is how we can look at the amendments from the previous session in order to strengthen that bill before we introduce it.
Nick Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I say how good it is to see the leader, my right honourable friend, in her role? Mr. Speaker, the Competition and Markets Authority, backed by the Court of Appeal, found the pharmaceutical firms Orden Mackenzie and Activis UK charging excessive and unfair prices for hydrocortisone tablets. NHS spending on these products rose from around £500,000 a year to over 80 million. Producers gaming the system to gouge the NHS is a bad look. Tens of thousands of people depend on these tablets to treat conditions such as Addison's disease. Could we please have a statement on NHS procurement? Our new plan for procurement needs to prevent bad actors ripping off our NHS in the future.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for his kind words, and it's a pleasure to continue to work with him in this new session as I did so closely in the last. He is a real champion of ensuring we've got transparency, accountability and value for money in our government, and he raises some important matters about that today. He may wish to raise them actually in the statement that's following business question this morning, which is looking at the audits just been carried out on the NHS, and procurement is a key part of those findings.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently visited Lindsay Lodge Hospice, which serves my constituents, along with St Andrew's Hospice in Grimsby. They rely on government for approximately 1/3 of their income. And obviously there were concerns that that may be reduced in the near future. The volunteers do a tremendous work, but they do need that government support. Could the leader arrange for a statement from the Secretary of State so that they can be reassured about their future income streams?
Leader.
Can I thank him for that question? This topic actually came up a lot in our session in business questions last week, so I'm sure there would be a wide support for it. I think the role that hospices play in end-of-life care is absolutely critical to this country, and I think if most people understood that the vast majority of their funding was charitable and was not from the government, I think people would be surprised. So I would encourage him to apply for a debate, because I think he'd get a lot of support.
Congratulations to Patricia Ferguson on their election. Patricia Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the Leader of the House if she can comment on the actions the Government is taking to reset the relationship with the Scottish Government. The early meeting of our Right Honourable friend Prime Minister with the First Minister of Scotland was widely welcomed. But what more can be done to ensure that both governments work together to deliver for the people of Scotland?
Leader.
Well, can I congratulate her on her election as the chair of the Select Committee? I know she'll really take that job with gusto and be a powerful voice in this chamber on these issues. And she's absolutely right. It's really important for us to work constructively and in a grown-up way with the Scottish Government. And the Prime Minister has begun that process of resetting the relationship. I've met myself with the Scottish First Minister as well, and I'll be going up to Scotland too in coming weeks, because one of the things we also want to strengthen is the Sewell Convention, and I know that will be something that she will give great consideration to as the chair of the Select Committee.
Dame Caroline Dinenage.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I just pick up on the question that was just asked by the honourable gentleman from Eltham about the infected blood scandal? The Leader of the House confirmed that there would be regulations made to compensate eligible persons who were affected by the infected blood scandal. So that's the families, the widows, in many cases the children who are left without parents. Will she make a time for a debate in which the government can confirm when these regulations will be made to establish compensation for the affected people to be discussed?
Leader.
Well, can I congratulate her too on becoming a chair of the DCMS Select Committee, which I know she will do with great passion and diligence, as she had done in the last session as well. She's absolutely right. The compensation scheme is now established, and those infected will receive their compensation by the end of this year, and those affected can expect to receive their compensation in 2025, and there will be further statements from the Paymaster General as the compensation scheme progresses.
Mike Amesbury.
EDM 169, which expresses my concern about the low threshold for pension credit and that cliff edge nature of it, and ask the leader if we could get a ministerial statement on how we as a government are going to address that.
Leader.
Well, can I thank my friend for that question? I know that he is a really fantastic campaigner for those who are on the breadline, those who are struggling, especially pensioners, the many pensioners in his constituency, and I know he will continue to raise these matters with the government, as he is right to do so. We have protected the triple lock. That has increased the state pension this year by £900, next year by over £400. We are ensuring other support there for pensioners with on pension credit and aligning that with housing benefit as well. But I would encourage him to keep raising these questions, and I will ensure that the Secretary of State has heard his call today for a further statement.
Vikki Slade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The issue of special educational needs funding is well known in this House. Local authorities are still waiting for clarity on an extension to the statutory override that allows them to fund the shortfall from core council budgets, including their reserves. The Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole deficit, where many of my constituents' children go to school, has reached £64 million, with reserves at just £65 million. Councils are not permitted to borrow to fund this, and without urgent action, they will be unable to set a legally balanced budget in February. Will time be made for the House to discuss SEND funding and local government finance before well-run councils like BCP become insolvent and more vulnerable children have failed?
Leader.
Can I thank her for raising that? Again, this issue gets raised with me and other ministers often, because too often in our education system, those with special education needs are found themselves not catered for by our education system. Our children's wellbeing bill will be forthcoming to this House in due course, and it will require all schools to cooperate with local authorities on special educational need inclusions, and I know there will be further announcements about education funding as part of the comprehensive spending review.
Liz Twist.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This Tuesday was World Suicide Prevention Day. Now, sadly, the latest statistics from the Office of National Statistics show that suicide rates are higher than we've seen for 2 decades. These are not just statistics, Mr. Speaker. They are people, and each suicide affects families, friends, colleagues and communities. Suicide is preventable, not inevitable. So can we have a debate in government time on how we can prevent these dreadful suicides?
Leader.
Well, suicide remains one of the biggest killers of young people in this country, and those figures are growing, and it is a terrible blight on all of those who are left behind, and something that many people struggle to come to terms with. Any action that we can take on suicide prevention is action we are going to take, and mental health and putting mental health on a parity with physical health is a key part of the reforms that the Secretary of State will be discussing in a statement shortly.
Robbie Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many constituents across the Worth Valley, Keighley and the wider area are deeply concerned about proposals to construct 65 wind turbines on Warsaw Moor, just in Calderdale. This development will have a hugely detrimental impact on the carbon storage capacity of the peat bogs, the ecology, but also local communities. And this is a development that I'm staunchly opposed to. And of course, constituents are concerned, Mr. Speaker, that as a result of Labour's choice to remove the moratorium on the development of onshore wind farms, that this development is more likely to take place. So can we have a debate in government time to discuss the negative impacts of the government's choice to remove the moratorium on onshore wind farms?
Leader.
Well, we make no apology, I'm afraid, for removing that moratorium on wind farms, because it's absolutely critical that we increase the capacity of wind and clean energy in this country to give us energy security, to lower bills, and to give us that energy independence that's absolutely critical to the future of our economy and our well-being. He might want to raise this issue in Dinenage questions, which will take place on the 8th of October.
Jane Craft.
Due to a legacy of financial mismanagement and effective bankruptcy left by the previous Conservative administration, our services have been cut to the absolute quick. Yep. This includes home-to-school transport for children with SEND, where there is not a statutory requirement for them to provide it. This includes children under the age of 5 and young people between 16 and 19 years old. Given that early intervention, particularly for children with SEND, has been well documented as having a positive impact, and the removal of provision for children aged 16 to 19 can have a devastating impact at this point of their development, will the Leader of the House allow time to discuss whether the statutory framework meets the needs of all children with SEND when it comes to home-to-school transport?
Leader.
Well, she raises an incredibly important issue. As she says, local authorities do have a statutory duty to arrange free home-to-school travel for children of compulsory school age, but there are many others that fall outside of that obligation. And I will ensure that the Secretary of State for Education has heard her plea this morning, and I'm sure if she put in for an adjournment debate on this matter, she would get it granted.
Just to help everybody, I'm running this for about another 40 minutes. So tell each other short questions and brief answers might be a way to get everybody in. So if people are disappointed, look to colleagues who may have taken too long. Testament.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act last year introduced requirements that directors and other individuals verify their identities before being listed at Companies House. I found company directors registered addresses which simply don't exist, which at the least means that papers can't be served, and at the worst it enables fraud and other crime. Could we have a debate on the progress of two things? The secondary legislation which needs to be passed for these basic checks to take place, and to update the House on how Companies House systems are progressing to allow directors' identities to be checked.
Yeah.
Well, she raises a very important and technical matter, and I will certainly look into the issue of the statutory instrument that she raises, and I would perhaps suggest that given she's got such expertise and diligence in this space, she might want to consider going on the public accounts or other committees as those places come up in the coming weeks.
Olivia Blake.
I met a constituent distressed by the fact that NHER2 will not be available in England on the NHS, which could extend her life by 2 years. I would like to ask for the debate in the government time on the impact of NICE's new methods of evaluating health technologies and the impact in particular on secondary breast cancer on approving life-extending medicines that may have previously been approved on the earlier NICE evaluation for health technologies scheme on the NHS.
Can I thank her for that question? I mean, the issue of the NICE agreement to drugs on the NHS is one, a very topical one that comes up in the Chamber and in business questions many times over. She might want to raise these health questions after we return from the recess, but I will certainly make sure that the relevant ministers heard her call today.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd be grateful for some help and advice from the Leader of the House, because when the winter fuel announcement was brought forward, I wrote to the Treasury and 3 times was told, no, this was a DWP issue. So, much to my surprise, following that logic, when it came to the VAT on schools, I've written to the Department of Education, who have told me, when it comes to assessing the impact, actually this is a Treasury issue. Therefore, I'm stuck in a bit of a merry-go-round trying to find out how this policy will impact on my constituents, given that it's due to come in January. Will she give me some advice on how I can do that? And would she be kind enough to ask the Education Secretary to meet with me to discuss the impact on my constituents of the VAT going on private schools?
Leader.
Well, I'm sure that she would be happy to answer his questions on that. It is a clear policy of this government because we want to ensure that the 93% of children who attend state schools get access to the high-quality education and the expert teachers that they desperately need. And that's why we are imposing VAT on private school fees. And our analysis would suggest that for many schools and for parents, that is a cost they will be able to absorb. And unfortunately, that is the situation as it is.
Picture.
And join me in congratulating Hatfield Town Cricket Club in Doncaster East and the Isle of Axholme on their 150th anniversary. Also, at the recent anniversary celebration, many residents asked me about my commitment as their MP to reopening the Doncaster-Sheffield Airport. Will my right honourable friend confirm that the government will continue to work with me, Mayor Ros, Doncaster City Council and others to support progress with its reopening?
Leader.
Well, can I thank him for that? And I do join my friend in congratulating the Hatfield Town Cricket Club on their 150th anniversary. He has been a real leader on the issue of reopening Doncaster and Sheffield Airport, and I know that progress is being made in this regard, and a 125-year lease has now been agreed, and I'm very much looking forward to the progress that he and Mayor Ros are going to continue to make in this area and get planes flying once again over Doncaster.
Ellie Charms.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this morning I attended DEFRA questions and I was surprised and somewhat confused to note that only 40 minutes were allocated for DEFRA questions compared to the hour that is standard for other departments. And so I would like to ask the Leader of the House why it is that this government is following what I understand was a convention from the previous Conservative government of restricting the time allocated for DEFRA questions, considering that it's such an important department covering everything from river pollution to farming support to the biodiversity crisis. And please, would the Leader of the House consider expanding the time allocated to DEFRA questions to the full hour? Thank you.
Leader.
Well, it's always a struggle to balance demand and supply of oral questions on the floor of the House. I know the Speaker shares those concerns. So what I would suggest, because we do look at these things periodically, is to ensure that members really do put in to the lottery for DEFRA oral questions, because if demand is increased significantly, then obviously that is something that we would take into account, and sometimes demand in other departments is much higher than it is in that one.
Helena Dolimore.
Over the summer, many parents in my constituency were in touch with concerns about our local schools in Hastings and Rye. Of particular concern to parents at Ark Alexandra Secondary is a new rule that means children must leave their mobile phones at home. Many parents support measures to reduce mobile phone use in school and social media use. They know how damaging it is, but they are really concerned about phones on the journey to and from school and the safety issues around this. And they want the school to look at options like lock boxes that have been used successfully elsewhere. Can the Leader of the House advise me on how I can take forward the issue in the House and the wider issue of improving our local schools?
Can I just say, I'm going to try and get as many in. We're really going to have to just be a bit quicker. If you don't want colleagues to get in, I understand. Leader.
Well, can I thank you for that question? As the mum of teenagers myself, I know what an issue it is to balance the wants of parents to be able to contact their children and see where they are, with also them not wanting them to be on their phones all the time, especially while they're at school, which would be damaging to their education. What I would say is that schools are encouraged to consult parents on these issues and to get that balance right. But I know the issue of mobile phones and teenagers and children is a big one. If she wants to put in for a debate, I'm sure she'll get one.
Rick Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with your words of thanks to Patricia Hillis, who has given superb service to this House and will always have the gratitude of the Smith family, having baptised my sons Charlie and Rupert in 2022. Something else that happened in the last Parliament was the passage of my private member's bill through to Royal Assent with the support of the then opposition on combating equipment theft from farms and other elements of rural crime. That Act requires a statutory instrument to bring it into full force. Instead of all these general debates, can I ask the Leader of the House to bring that statutory instrument forward?
Leader.
Well, he will know that statutory instruments don't always, or in many cases, require time on the floor of the House. But I will look, as somebody who is responsible for triaging those statutory instruments, I will look at where the progress with that, and I will let him know in due course.
Andy Slaughter.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. Can we have a debate on the importance of investigative and public interest journalism? The best journalists are an essential part of our democracy. Can I urge all members to look at today's Guardian long read by Tom Burgess, How Oligarchs Took on the UK Fraud Squad and Won? And can I pay tribute to Telegraph journalist David Knowles, creator of the brilliant Ukraine the Latest podcast, who tragically died last weekend at the age of only 32. I'm sure my right honourable friend will join me in sending condolences to David's family and friends.
Leader of the House.
Well, can I first of all congratulate him on his election as a Select Committee chair as well, and I certainly would pay my condolences to David's family. He's absolutely right. Investigative journalism is so important to our democracy, and we should do whatever we can as a country to support it, and I'm sure that the Culture Secretary would be happy if he raised these matters with her in forthcoming oral questions.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Chancellor of the Exchequer offered assurances on the 29th of July from the dispatch box about the construction of railway stations at Wellington and Cullompton, but this was contradicted the following day in a letter that I received from the Rail Minister, who said that these stations were still at the design stage. The Rail Minister offered a meeting in the tea room once Parliament was sitting. But given that the House is about to adjourn for 3 weeks for party political conferences, and given that Transport Questions isn't until the 10th of October, can the leader suggest how I might progress the case for a station at Cullompton with the Rail Minister with urgency?
You have done, Leader.
Well, I was just going to say the same, Mr. Speaker, that I'm sure in raising that here this morning, I will ensure that the Transport Secretary has heard that call and ask for a Transport Minister to meet with him urgently, as he was promised.
Emma Foodie.
Pay tribute firstly to a constituent of mine, Jack Hearns. Jack turns 101 this week and is the UK's oldest judo teacher, but is also one of just 5 living veterans who fought at the Battle of Monte Cassino in World War II. Jack's supported by Forward Assist, a local charity that helps veterans around the country. Will the government make time for a debate on the support for veterans?
Leader.
Well, can I join her in congratulating Jack as well? I'm sure, as is often the case, that around the time of Remembrance Sunday there will be ample time on the floor of the House to do what this government and many members in the House will want to do, which is pay tribute to all of those veterans that served this country so well over many years.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Leader of the House for the opportunity to ask an important question? I'd like to draw the House's attention to the Philippines, where a recently passed anti-discrimination law aimed at enhancing equality, protecting marginalised groups has sparked nationwide debate about its implications for religious freedom. Whilst the law seeks to prevent unfair treatment in employment, education and public services, how can the government ensure that religious freedoms are safeguarded, particularly given concerns raised by faith-based groups about potential conflicts with their beliefs on gender identity and sexual orientation? Will the Leader of the House join me in questioning such persecution of religious freedom, and will she urge the FCDO to raise this issue with their counterparts in the Philippines? Thank you so much.
Well, can I thank him for once again raising the very important issue of expression of freedom of religion or belief for all, and I certainly will ask the Foreign Office to raise these issues that are happening in the Philippines, and he will know that the government is committed to ensuring that there is freedom of religion and belief for all across the world.
Jake Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There have been a number of really tragic road traffic accidents in my constituency in Wickersley, Anston, Sitwell and Whiston. I'm meeting with South Yorkshire Police to look at steps we can take to stop these accidents happen. But can we have a debate on how agencies, local authorities and the police can work together to tackle speeding and boy racers in my constituency and across the country?
Leader.
Well, can I first of all congratulate him on coming so high up in the private members' ballot draw. I know he will have achieved that to the envy of many. And he raises a very important matter about road traffic accidents and road safety. We will soon be updating the strategic framework for road safety, and I will ensure that this is brought to the House as soon as it is ready.
Jessica Toole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bournemouth hosts the Arts by the Sea Festival, the largest arts and culture celebration of its kind in the South West. Investments in the arts and culture and community arts festivals like this have been vital to revitalising our seaside towns by bringing visitors, supporting the local economy and nurturing a community of creatives. So can I ask the Leader of the House for a general debate in government time on how we invest and support the arts to help our future cities and towns develop? Thank you.
Leader.
Well, can I commend my honourable friend for her campaigning for an art gallery in her constituency and for all the campaigning that she's doing to bring attention to Bournemouth West and all that it has to offer. She's absolutely right that the creative sector, the creative economy is absolutely critical to regeneration and levelling up, an agenda that this government fully supports.
Shona Kumar.
In the town of Dudley, the proposed introductions of parking charges by the Conservative-led council, which affects students from Dudley College of Technology, Learning Development, local businesses, traders, users of the leisure centre and my residents who will struggle with these costs. Can the Leader of the House allow a debate in government time about how we support town centres and properly consider the potential negative impact on economic activity, community well-being caused by hiking of parking charges?
Leader.
Well, as the Member of Parliament for Manchester Central, I'm all too familiar with the challenges of parking charges in our towns and city centres. That's why, in part, we are, as a government, are ensuring we've got better public transport, particularly better buses, to ensure that people do have alternatives. But I know that this issue creates a lot of interest should she wish to apply for a debate on parking charges.
David Williams.
I met with the Hub Foundation in Stoke-on-Trent, who have delivered yet another fantastic holiday, activities and food programme over the summer. I have seen firsthand over many years the impact of their work, and it was a bittersweet moment when they handed out their 1 millionth meal a couple of weeks ago. Will the Leader of the House make time for a debate on the continuation of such programmes to alleviate child poverty in Stoke-on-Trent North and Kidsgrove and across the country?
Leader.
Well, he raises a very important issue, that the fact that in this country, in 2024, we still need to operate food banks and holiday clubs to stop children from starving in the school holidays is frankly something that should bring us all shame. And that's why we've got a child poverty strategy, and we will continue to support holiday clubs like the one he describes in Stoke-on-Trent North, and I thank him for raising this important matter.
Becky Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Darcy report, published earlier today, clearly outlines the importance of prevention. And one aspect of this is the provision of good quality school meals and increasing the uptake of free school meals. May I request a consideration of a debate on an opt-out free school meal scheme, perhaps on the basis of universal credit? Thank you.
Leader.
Well, it's the second question in a row on food poverty and the importance for children to really get access to healthy, hot, high-quality meals. And she raises a really important issue there about the uptake of free school meals, but also it's about how they're delivered in schools so that we don't often have the stigma that we've sometimes seen in the past. But I'm sure if she put in for a debate on free school meals, she would find it might be successful.
Can I just say there's a couple of members who are standing who came in very late. Please, I won't be taking it. Tom Rutland.
Our creaking water infrastructure is rarely out of the news, and just this week my constituents in Shoreham had to endure burst sewage pipes. And thanks to years of underinvestment by our water companies, record levels of sewage are being pumped into our rivers and seas. Can I ask the Leader of the House if the government will make time for this important issue to be discussed?
Leader.
Thank him for that question. It's absolutely shocking the state of our waterways in this country, and frankly the the decriminalised way in which our water companies have been run over for many years. And that's why this government's taken quick action to clamp down on the water companies to take action. We've just last week introduced a water special measures bill, which will eventually find its way to this House, and I'm sure that he might want to take part in that second reading when it comes.
Katrina Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Digital access has become an increasingly essential part of everyday life. However, for large parts of my constituency of Cumbernauld and Kirkintilloch, they suffer from both slow and digital dead zones. As you'll appreciate, this has a massive impact on both residents and businesses, particularly as more of my constituents are embracing flexible hybrid working. Can I ask my right honourable friend to grant a debate on digital connectivity?
Leader.
Digital inclusion is absolutely critical to ensuring that the growth we want to see in our economy reaches every part and every community. She raises an incredibly important matter, and I'm sure that the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology will want to hear from her at orals in October.
Paul Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House may be aware that Home Firth is one of the most cherished locations in Yorkshire. Nestled in the heart of the Yorkshire Pennines, the Home Firth Food and Drink Festival offers a delightful family day out, brimming with live music, delicious food and entertainment. This weekend, I, along with thousands of others, will explore the stalls for local produce and enjoy the street performers. Therefore, I welcome the £10 million that the West Yorkshire Combined Authority and Kirklees Council are investing in the town. This will enhance the town centre, attracting more visitors to the town, its festivals and local shops, including venues like the Picture Drome. Can we have a debate in government's time on the importance of the rural economy in the government's growth agenda?
Well, can I thank him for that question about Home Firth, where I recently went for a short staycation, and what a beautiful Yorkshire village it is. It's a lot more than its reputation as the location of Last of the Summer Wine, which many people will remember. He raises an important point, and I think the rural economy is an issue that continuously being raised as an issue for a debate, and I'm sure we will look into it.
Alex Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Grub Hub in my constituency is supporting some of the my most vulnerable constituents, not only offering vital food support, but also companionship and wraparound services to help people move forward with their lives. Will the Leader of the House join me in commending this organisation for their fantastic work? But whilst their work is fantastic, can I join colleagues in asking for a debate about how we ensure there is no longer any need for food banks in towns like Aldershot moving forward?
Leader.
Well, it is a disgrace that towns like Aldershot still need food banks and that food poverty in this country is still so prominent. This is a key issue for this government and part of our cross-cutting task force on tackling child poverty, and I will make sure that we are updated on the progress of that task force on an ongoing basis to this House.
Alison Norman.
Recently, a really lovely constituent of mine spoke to me about the serious drug shortages of Creon 25,000 needed to treat his condition of pancreatic enzyme insufficiency. The drug is also used by people who are to be treated with cystic fibrosis and with pancreatic cancer, the horrible cancer which killed my mum. Joe is now petrified because he's running out of his tablets, he's scared to eat and he's terrified of the pain he will be in. Will the Leader of the House provide a statement to the House on the supply of Creon 25,000 and the alternative Nutrizyme, which is also in short supply?
Leader.
Well, could I thank the Honourable Lady for that question? Access to appropriate drugs freely on the NHS continues to be an issue that is raised with me and with the Health Secretary, who is in his place as she asked that question. So I'm sure he will take that up, and I'll write to him to make sure that he does. Thank you.
Chris MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1/3 of children in my constituency of Stockton North now live in poverty, and a recent report by Shelter has shown that there's been an increase in homelessness and child poverty, which is affecting many parts of the country. I wonder if she might find some government time for a debate on child poverty and its causes.
Well, he's absolutely right that child poverty, which is still too high in this country and blights us all, is a cross-cutting issue, and housing is a key part of that. That's why we have the cross-cutting task force looking at these issues. It's also why we've introduced, just this week, the Renters' Rights Bill, which will look at the challenges of the private rented sector.
Chris Bloor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The devastating impact of knife crime is of huge concern to my constituents in Redditch and villages. One of my constituents, Pete Martin, a self-defence instructor, witnessed a friend stabbed 12 times, has been working with local schools to work with young people to educate them on the dangers of carrying knives. Will the leader consider making space in government time for a debate how we can support the work of people like Mr Martin and reduce knife crime in our communities?
Leader.
Well, can I welcome him to his place? It was a pleasure to visit him before the election. He's absolutely right. Tackling knife crime is a key part of our mission for safer streets. The Prime Minister launched the Coalition to Tackle Knife Crime along with the campaigner Idris Elba just this week. And last month we launched a nationwide call to hand over zombie-style knives and machetes ahead of these weapons being banned from our streets on the 24th of September.
Andrew Pate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Small businesses, coffee shops, traders are the lifeblood of a constituency like mine in Peterborough and across the country. Will the leader join me in congratulating the Federation of Small Businesses who celebrate their 50th anniversary this coming Sunday? And will she make time in this House for us to be able to debate the amazing contribution the 5.5 million small business owners in this country play?
Leader.
Well, he makes a really important point of the vital nature of our small independent shops to our high streets like he has in Peterborough. That, let's be honest, the party opposite hollowed out our high streets and town centres across the country, and this government will turn the tide and put that right.
Colin Rand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Altrincham Minor Injuries Unit is a service that was relied on and appreciated by my constituents. Bay has been closed since 2020, and the Trafford Locality Board recently recommended it should never reopen. I'm opposing this recommendation, shaped as it is by 14 years of Conservative failure on our National Health Service. But could we have a debate in government time about the importance of minor injuries units, on alleviating pressures on A&E departments and ensuring our National Health Service can truly be a neighbourhood health service?
Leader.
Well, as the Secretary of State for Health is about to outline in a statement shortly, the truly shocking state of our NHS after 14 years of underinvestment and neglect is being laid bare. And I know one of the key priorities that the Secretary of State will shortly be outlining is to ensure that our services move from hospital to communities. And so minor injuries unit like that in Altrincham would be important to that endeavour.
Mark Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Antisocial behaviour is ruining lives. In my short time as the MP for Leeds South West and Morley, I have been inundated with requests from residents for help about persistent antisocial behaviour from neighbours, persistent antisocial behaviour from repeat offenders in public spaces and in parks. Given that the previous government decimated the services available to councils to deal with this and decimated the services available to the police to deal with this, please can my honourable friend, the leader, grant an urgent debate in government time to get the police and councils the resources they need to deal with this persistent problem?
Leader.
Well, can I thank you for that? Tackling antisocial behaviour is a top priority for this government. That's why we will get thousands more police and PCSOs on our streets with neighbourhood policing roles back in action. That's why we'll be bringing in tough new powers, and we'll legislate to ensure that those powers are as effective as possible.
Final question, Ben Gillsborough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Residents in South Norfolk are currently being let down badly by the Royal Mail. Those living in the Porringland area are waiting weeks to receive urgent post, NHS letters, legal documents and birthday cards. Can we have a debate in government time about the importance of Royal Mail connections within our rural areas to ensure that we get post delivered on time to the people who need it most?
Leader.
Well, the universal service is absolutely vital to communities like that he represents. And that's why any changes to this service will be a matter for this House to debate thoroughly and robustly. And I'm sure he will want to take part in that at that time.
I'll let the front benches clear before we start the statement.